Golden Audiobooks presents, narrated by Andrew Hint. Death of a Viewer written by Herbert Adams. Chapter 1. Conspiracy. Sandra, we are broke. More than usual? Infinitely more. Finally, definitely, and completely broke. What is it? Cards or racing? Both, and something on the stock exchange. I am sorry, darling, but never in my life have I known such damnable ill luck. Everything at once. To get square, I plunged on last chance for the big race. It was a cert, and it won. But the jockey was disqualified. That put the lid on. There was no reply. The room was luxurious rather than poverty-stricken, and the two people in it showed no signs of penury. It was an apartment in a South Kensington hotel. Not perhaps the most fashionable quarter in that area if there is one, but its charges were high and its appointments adequate. The man perched on the arm of a well-padded settee looked less rueful than his words might have suggested. He had good features and dark wavy hair. He was in evening clothes of the latest style, complete except that he had not yet donned his tails. His trousers, shirt, and shoes left nothing to be desired. The girl, sitting in front of the mirror, was using her lipstick. Over her dainty underwear, she had a quilted, silken bed jacket partially fastened. The dress she was to wear lay on the bed. From his perch, the man could see her reflection in the glass, the curves of her neck and the fine contours of her breasts. He could also see himself. They were in fact as good-looking a couple as one could easily find. He noted with pleasure, as he always did, her feminine shapeliness, her golden hair and clear blue eyes. He was watching the expression on her face. It had not changed as he told of his misfortunes, and when she spoke, her voice showed no emotion. "How exactly do we stand?" she said at last. "As the bankruptcy people, unfeeling brutes, will put it, liabilities 4,000, assets nil. I have enough cash to keep us here for another 2 or 3 weeks, but I owe a tidy bit to Marcus Galloway. Nothing further doing there. Have you anything? The price of cab fare. I'm a little bit gone." She could see his head as he nodded. "I am afraid, darling, everything is gone." There was another uneasy silence. How would she take it? He watched her anxiously, as well he might. "I was a fool to marry you, Aussie." The words were still cool. "I suppose all girls have that sort of madness when they are young. With some it turns out all right. They get the prizes. I got only you. You enjoyed it while it lasted." 5 years, she murmured. He got up and kissed her shoulder. "Darling, I still love you and we have each other." She made no response. Broke. The word was familiar enough to her. Her parents had been strolling players, as it was once called, or members of touring companies in more modern parlance. They were not good enough to get London engagements of any value, and although not often out of work, there had been times when only loans from their friends kept them going. They had hoped for great things from her, but she had disappointed them. They got her chances, but her talents did not lie that way. "You have the looks, Sandra," her mother sometimes told her, "far better than most girls, but you say the words as though you were reading a story. You must be it. You must live it. She may wake up when she falls in love," her father had said. They both died when she was 17. She got a job as a model in a W-end dressmaking establishment, and her poise and her promising figure gave her some success. Before she was 19, she met and married Captain Oswald Henshaw. She thought she loved him, and she imagined he was rich. He certainly spent money freely. She heard mention of £5,000 and supposed that was his annual income. She did not know it was his entire capital, left him by his father, and he was busy getting rid of it as quickly as he could. It is a tribute perhaps to his skill as a gambler or to his luck that it had lasted so long. At his suggestion, she had put her modest savings, about £300, into what he called their joint account so that they could both draw on it. Now that was gone too. Luckily, she had no debts. Her parents had at least taught her the folly of that. I suppose I could go back to old Harbottle, she said at last. What will you do? I don't want you to go back to Harbottle, darling, to wear his rags from evening gowns to swimsuits and be stared at by the other women and the men they bring with them, like a prize beast at a show. That is how we met. I took you from it. I don't want you to go back. What will you do? She asked again, perhaps with a show of derision. What can I do? I would like the sort of job Tony Summers got secretary to a rich American who really only wanted to see the high spots. But such chances are few and far between. You have your car. It went on last chance. I must hand it over at the end of the month. I sold my pearl studs too. These are fake. You never told me. It has been pretty sudden, my dear. I hope to the last to get square. Again, there was silence. Her hands dropped to the dressing table. They looked at each other in the mirror, perhaps as they had never done before. She had loved him, and she was not very worldly wise. She had realized for some months that things were not going well with them, but she had never thought they would be as bad as this. Perhaps it was the loss of her small savings that hurt most. She had accumulated them so slowly, so carefully, with a good deal of self-denial in the days before she married wealth. Something for a rainy day had been one of her father's maxims, even if he could seldom live up to it. Now, without a word to her, all was gone, gone with nothing to show for it to a bookmaker already over-rich. One hears on all hands that men are wanted, she said slowly. Men of experience, darling. What can I do? You would not have me drive a bus or tend a bar. She did not answer. After a time, he spoke again. As a matter of fact, I have a plan, but it needs your help. What is it? You know you and Jones? Of course I do. He admires you tremendously. She turned from the mirror and faced him. You have sold everything you possess, Ossie. If you think of selling me, you must find someone with a lot more money than you and Jones. There was contempt in her tone. It is not that at all, darling. You may be the only precious thing left to me, but I would not lose you for all the gold in the world. It hurts me that you should for a moment suggest such a thing. Then what are we talking about? You say Ewan is not rich. That, of course, is true. He is a member of Parliament for some squalid place in the East End. Yes, but it means nearly 2,000 a year. I was at school with him, and we were in the army together. His father, formerly Jimmy Jones and now Lord Bethesda, was as fiery socialist as you could find in all Wales. Then they put him in the House of Lords, and he married Connie Martin, the only daughter of the late Josiah Martin, the brewer. Josiah's father or grandfather started with a single pub, but they acquired more and started brewing. When he died, Josiah left something over $500,000 to his daughter after all duties had been paid. And if what Ewan says is true, Sandra commented, Lady Bethesda still keeps a tight hand on it. How does this interest us? When socialists get into the House of Lords, her husband smiled, they often tend to moderate their opinions. When they marry wealthy women, the process may be quicker. Connie would not accept him if he kept the old name, as many of them do. Lord Jones would sound a little foolish. So they became Lord and Lady Bethesda, after the place where he was born. How does this interest us? Sandra repeated. Ewan has little to do with his stepmother, and his opinions are as strong as his father's used to be. His wife thinks like he does. His wife, Gwynnie Wren. I know she writes and speaks in her own name, but she's his wife. How do you know that? Ossie asked, smiling again. Isn't it true? I very much doubt it, though it might be better if it were so. Certainly they have lived together for a time in that queer place in Dockland, but marriage may or may not have come into it. They did not always agree, and he is very tired of her. I don't blame him. You cannot have two tub thumpers in one house, each trying to shout down the other. Is this leading anywhere? Sandra asked. Yes, darling. One thing I want to make clear. Connie Bethesda has piles of pelf and oceans of pride. She would pay handsomely to prevent any breath of scandal coming to her family, or rather to the family she had honored with her alliance. There is scandal already if Ewan and Gwynnie Wren live together and are not married. East is east and west is west. Dockland to Connie is much farther away than the Riviera or New York. She only knows of Gwen as a writer of society gossip with a tendency to poisonous socialism. She keeps away from such things, won't allow them to be mentioned. What about Ewan's father? If he knows or suspects anything, he is too wise to tell his wife about it. The thing is this. Ewan admires you. If you encouraged him a little, he would fall for you completely. If I discovered you and him in what we will call compromising circumstances and threatened an action for the alienation of my wife's affection, Connie would pay up handsomely to settle out of court. You and I, happily reconciled, would be in clover. Sandra looked at him for some moments without speaking. It would have been difficult for anyone to tell what she was thinking. In the curious world in which she had been brought up, strict morality had been more conspicuous by its absence than its rigid observance. Say that again, she said slowly. I'm not suggesting there should be anything wrong, Ossie replied. I cannot allow that. Heaven forbid. But if Ewan made love to you, as he would like to do, I see no reason why he or his family should not pay for it. It is just a little drama in which you and I would play our parts, and it should have a happy ending. I believe in happy endings. A sort of blackmail? Not in the least, darling. I should demand nothing. I said I should threaten an action. If they offer me something not to bring it, I should be forced to listen to them. Not only the slur on the noble Bethesda name would be involved, but Ewan would be dropped by the party and lose his seat. With 2,000 we could carry on. Connie might be good for 10. I never thought you were such a blackguard, Ossie. I am not. Desperate ills call for desperate remedies. That is all. Can you suggest anything better? You do not want me to drive a bus. She did not answer the question. She said, if Ewan and Gwynnie Wren are married, Gwen might bring the action against Ewan and me. That would not help you. Lady Bethesda would not pay for mud already thrown. Clever of you, Sandra, to have thought of that. I had not overlooked it, but Ewan and Gwen are not married and never will be. I assure you that is a fact. She wants to have a life of her own. So does he. He is ambitious, and, as I told you, he is tired of her. You cannot have two kings in one castle. Yours, friend. Of course I am. That is what makes it so bad for him to covet my wife. Again she looked at him as though seeking to read the thoughts behind his smile. She did not doubt the truth of what he said about Ewan and Gwen. His plan would be so foolish if it were otherwise. She spoke slowly. I think I understand. Would you put your proposals in writing, promising me half of anything you receive? He stared at her. Then he laughed. I never thought you were mercenaries, Sandra. I am not, she said, but I am learning. Of course I could not write anything like that. If you lost it, if anyone else got hold of it, we should be cooked. Might be charged with conspiracy. That is what I thought. She again spoke very slowly. Suppose I really fell for Ewan? He bent forward and kissed her. I am not afraid of that. He is too stodgy for you, and you love me. Come along, darling. We are late already. Slip on your frock, and we will go to Pegano's for a drink. To the end of our troubles. We might meet him there, and you could start the good work. Chapter 2. Old Nick's Folly. Roger Benyon became involved in what was to be known as the television murder in rather a curious manner. His father, old Sir Christopher, before and after the First World War, had added to his considerable wealth by judicious speculations in house property. The ground leases of houses in fashionable Belgravia were getting very short. Built nearly 100 years before, many of them were still in their primeval state. Noble families had houses without bathrooms, or at most with one. They lacked electric light, and the servants' quarters were dark and dismal. Sir Christopher was able to buy them for a few pounds. In some cases they paid substantial sums to be relieved of the liability to redecorate and put them in repair. On undertaking to bring them up to modern standards, he secured new and longer leases. Then 3 or 4 bathrooms, central heating, up-to-date sanitation, dinner lifts, parquet floors, tasteful decorations, and, where necessary, bigger windows were installed. He had a genius for such things and only asked a reasonable profit on his outlay. He found a ready market. He felt he was doing a good work, but when the housing problem became acute and domestic help almost disappeared, he turned his attention to country properties. Many an old manor house became adapted as a school, a convalescent home, or was cut up into flats. He also created what some called Old Nick's Folly. It was nothing of the sort. It was a deliberate attempt to offer houses to disabled soldiers, sailors, or civilians at rents they could afford, regardless of the losses he thereby incurred. He saw it as a thank offering for a long and successful life. Many people in the past had left money to endow almshouses. He thought it better in his lifetime to erect them and have the pleasure of seeing the right folk enjoy them, not as almshouses, but as homes of which they could be proud, an example others might emulate. He bought some land not far from the London docks and built between 30 and 40 little dwellings of tasteful design with labor-saving comforts and conveniences. Each had a small garden and was let to a suitable tenant at a rent of 6 shillings a week, with the landlord paying the rates and doing the repairs. He lost heavily on them, but it was his little village and became a cheery oasis amid the grime and squalor of its surroundings. He might have done more in the same way, but building restrictions, higher costs, and his own increasing age prevented it. As a second name was Nicholas, many laughed at him, and the enterprise became known as Old Nick's Folly. He had a reliable agent to look after the property, but he liked his son Roger, who had been his partner in some of his ventures, though not in that, to visit there occasionally and report personally to him. It thus happened that on the day after Ossie Henshaw announced his financial difficulties to Sandra, his wife, Roger was strolling amid the freshly painted cottages, mostly bright with gay flowers. At one of them he stopped. As he did so, the occupant, a big and certainly able-bodied man, came out. "Major Benyon," he boomed. "Pleasure to see you here. An unusual pleasure, if I may say so." "I came to see you," Roger said. "I am honored. Come inside." Roger followed him into a pleasant room that served as sitting room and study. Meals were generally eaten in the neat little kitchen behind it. Upstairs were 2 bedrooms and a bathroom. "Sit down, Major Benyon. What can I do for you? Do you know a man named Daniel Floss?" "Old Dan, my father's gardener?" "I believe so. Of course I know him," was the hearty reply. "An excellent fellow. Oh, I fear his gardening days are done. Crippled with arthritis. Getting on in years, too. So I understand. His wife is a decent woman." "Excellent, excellent. I believe she still helps sometimes in the house." "They have been recommended," Roger said, "as a suitable couple for one of these cottages. They have friends here. Your father wants their present cottage for a new and younger man, and is willing to help them get something else." "Quite right. You could not have worthier people. Worked hard, and I would like them to end their days in a nice little place like one of these. He spoke heartily. He had a big voice and possessed a thick crop of curly, reddish-brown hair over a strongly featured face. His age was about 35. I can recommend them in every way, he added. I'm glad of that, Mr. Jones, Roger said. The trouble is we have nothing available for them. I was wondering if you would move out and let them come here. That is not quite reasonable, is it? Very reasonable, I think. You, as a member of Parliament, are not the sort of person these places were meant for. Maybe, maybe not. Here I am, and here I stay. Ewan grinned as one who knew his rights. If it is a question of rents, you will find me open to a fair settlement. As you should know, Roger replied, it is nothing of that sort. My father intended these to be homes for the veterans of the services or of industry generally. You got this by a sort of trick. You knew the Maxwells, a worthy old couple. When Maxwell had to go to hospital, you suggested to his wife that you should come with a lodger. What you paid would help her. Lodgers, by the way, are not allowed, or each house might take them, perhaps several of them, and the nature of the place would be changed. When Maxwell died, you stayed on with Mrs. Maxwell as your housekeeper. When she died some months later, you still stayed on. Mason, my father's agent, unfortunately accepted rent from you, and so created a tenancy. The MP smiled. I know the law on these things. If you wanted to live here yourself, I do not. I have told you who it is for. Should you not be ashamed that a man of your position and of your means, son and heir to Lord Bethesda, should occupy a home meant for the aged and infirm, and so keep your old gardener out of it? Not a bit. Look here, Major Benyon, you talk of my means. I know most of the people here are old age pensioners, and thanks to you or your father, they are very comfortably off, but round the corner there are scores of houses, hundreds perhaps, with 3 or 4 wage earners in the family who bring in twice as much in their pay packets as I get. I like living near my constituents, and they like me to be here. It is handy for the house, just an easy run on the underground. If you refuse to go, Roger said, we might apply for an eviction order. That would test the validity of the tenancy. No doubt of its validity. But as I said, if anything more is due to you, I am willing to pay it. Even the new Rent Act would not protect you, and there may be other grounds for action, such as some of your neighbors suggest that the lady who is living with you is not your wife. Ewan Jones laughed. Because she writes and speaks as Gwenny Wren? That is just what they would suggest. Are they wrong? The question would of course be put to you when the case is heard. You can easily dispose of it by showing when and where you were married. The MP still regarded him good-humoredly. Would it surprise you, Major Benyon, if 2 people, a man and a woman, having mutual interests and engaged in the same sort of work, agreed to share a home? Would there be anything wrong in it? I do not know what conclusion a court would draw. My father designed these places, as I said, for the old and partially disabled. 4 too young and very able people, each earning a considerable income. To get possession of one of them would appear wrong to most people. It does to me. Assuming you were right, Gwenny Wren might not wish to marry me. We do not agree about everything, but we do agree that to have our incomes lumped together and so get lower allowances and a higher rate of tax would not be to our advantage. The law in that respect may be bad, Roger said. If it is you're more responsible for it than we are, do you think it would be good for you or your father if this came out in court? I see your point, Ewan replied more seriously, but do you see mine? It suits me to live here, and I could not get alternative accommodation at anything like the same figure. Would it alter your views if Gwen left me? That is your affair, Roger said. We want the accommodation for Daniel Floss. Ewan pondered for some moments. Look here, Benyon, Suppose you spent a weekend at Welton Priory, my father's place, or rather, his wife's. You could see Floss, and you could also see my father. You could put the case to him, and you might suggest he should buy me a house or enable me to take a flat handy for Westminster. He makes you no allowance? Not a farthing. His wife is a wealthy woman. She is not very fond of me, and they think I ought to be able to manage. I can, living here, but not otherwise. If you, as an independent party, supported me, it might help, especially as it would rid them of old Dan. How am I to be invited to Welton Priory? Ewan's smile returned. Nothing easier, and it will give you a peep behind the scenes. In my view, our party, call it Labor or Socialist as you like, wants pep. My father has agreed to my getting together in a fortnight's time at the Priory, a ginger group, to work out a plan of campaign. You could come then. Politics are not in my line, Rogers said. So much the better. An independent view might be helpful. I am quite serious about it, and I hope it would do my father good. He was once called the Welsh Lion. He led 2 successful strikes. He was in the cabinet, but since he married this wealthy woman, he has lost his fire. I would like to rekindle it. If you are not interested in our talk, the grounds run down to the river, and you might get some trout. That, as it happened, was artful bait. Roger was a keen angler, but Ruth, his wife, was not. It seemed selfish to indulge in the sport alone, especially as he was trying to interest her in golf. But she was shortly to take their infant, Penelope, and to visit her grandparents, the dean and his wife, at Finchester, and he was not going with them. It was a chance worth considering. Who will be in your party? He asked. It is left to me. There will be a moderate houseful on Friday, and on Sunday, several more come over for the day. It is very hush-hush at present. It would not do for our party bosses to get wind of it. I would like to include a few non-politicians so that it shall not look suspicious. Do you know Captain and Mrs. Henshaw? I think I have met them. They may come the day before. Of course, one will be there in her own right. Not a word to anybody, please, of what we were saying just now. A few trade union MPS are bringing their wives, and I hope to get Jeremiah along. Who is Jeremiah? Roger asked. Don't you know him, old Tom Dayton? He always says woe, woe, and doom. On Sunday, there will be some of our heavyweights. Sounds amusing. The press. Certainly not. Top drawer secret. If anything leaked out, you and the Henshaws would make it look like an ordinary house party. You could get a bit of fishing, and you will see Floss and my father. Should not the invitation come from Lady Bethesda? No. I just let them know who to expect, and they fix it up. Good food and all the latest mod. Con, you're not likely to see much of my worthy stepmother. She does not approve, and she does not know who is coming, but she will not let us down. Too proud for that. She may spend most of her time with her son. She has a son by your father? Not a doubt of it. The precious Ambrose. A decent kid, really. Spoiled, of course, about 5 years old. You will come. I think I might manage it. But it makes no difference to my wanting this place. Good. I hope we shall arrange that you get it. Don't forget your rod. Chapter 3. Welton Priory. It is sometimes impossible to fix the precise impulses that govern our actions. We think we are free agents, yet those actions may have results we were far from foreseeing. Is it possible that fate or providence spins a web much wider than we imagine, and our choice is part of it? Roger Benyon might have found it difficult to say exactly why he had accepted the rather odd invitation to visit Welton Priory. Ewan Jones had been fairly honest with him. He felt some liking for the fellow, though he was still determined to get him out of the house to which he should never have been admitted. The fact that Ruth and their infant were to be away for a time, and the prospect of some fishing carried weight. It might be amusing to see a political plot in the making, and he was always interested in genuine old buildings. All these things influenced him, but it may be that fate or providence wanted him there for the part he was to play in the early but unexpected future. Whether or not foreknowledge would have deterred him, it is impossible to say. Those who know him best may think it would have whetted his appetite for the startling and sensational. Having seen Ruth and Penelope in Well on the Way to Penchester, he turned his car towards the Priory, which was in that charming part of the country where Sussex joins Hampshire. The residence, which he had been told had been built earlier than Hampton Court Palace, appeared smaller than he had expected. The elevation was of mellowed red brick and had tall gables and lofty twisted chimneys. As he approached it through a long and well-kept drive, with glimpses of pretty flower garden on either side, it certainly looked attractive. He was to learn later it was larger than he had thought, though smaller than it once had been. Most mansions that have lasted for centuries have undergone changes. Many have been added to by succeeding owners, often with architectural crime and conglomerate hideousness. The Priory, though reduced in size, retained much of its original charm. Shaped somewhat like the letter, you had formed three sides of a quadrangle. The frontage was not great, but the two wings continued for some depth, enclosing another well-kept flower garden. It would be expensive to maintain, and what had induced the millionaire brewer to acquire it and bequeath it to his daughter could only be surmised. But it was certainly a wonderful home for the former coal miner, the one-time Lion of Wales. It was about tea time when Roger arrived, apparently a little earlier than he was expected. Contrary to Ewan's prediction, he speedily made the acquaintance of Lady Bethesda. He was shown into a small room on the ground floor that was generally referred to as her ladyship's room. It could hardly be described as a model of good taste. The curtains and chair covers were of bright colors that would have offended a sensitive eye, and a few pieces of undoubtedly period furniture were alongside chairs of the metal tube design, comfortable but hardly in character. He was interested rather than critical, and after a few moments his hostess entered, leading a little boy by the hand. "I am so pleased to meet you, Major Benyon," she said. "Ewan has gone to fetch some of his friends. He should be back soon. I'm sorry my husband is not down yet. He has not been very well and has to reserve himself for what may be a late night. This is my son, Ambrose." Roger bowed over the extended hand. Lady Bethesda was tall and thin, not beautiful, but with dark eyes and straight black eyebrows. It was rather a hard face, but he had the impression she could be pleasant when she tried, and she was trying. As to Master Ambrose, he was a solemn-looking boy with dark eyes like his mother's. He was wearing black velvet knickers with a white silk shirt, something in the Fauntleroy style of a bygone age. "You must tell me the games you play," Roger said to him genially. The boy offered a limp hand, but made no reply. "Tea will be here almost at once," Lady Bethesda remarked. "You will not mind if Ambrose has it with us? His nurse is out this afternoon." "Nice and cozy," Roger smiled. "I had an idea Captain and Mrs. Hensham might be here." "They are. They came on Wednesday, but they went with Ewan. At least Sandra did. Her husband said he would try his luck fishing." "I believe your stream is famous," Roger returned, "but perhaps you are more interested in politics, Lady Bethesda. With a husband so distinguished and with his son a member of Parliament, you could hardly fail to be. Do you take an active part yourself?" "I'm afraid I do not. Frankly, politics bore me. Why cannot people be contented with things as they are instead of clamoring all the time for changes?" "Then it is very good of you to allow this meeting in your beautiful home. I'm not all that selfish. These things mean a lot to my husband, and it gives us a chance to see something of Ewan. He prefers to live in London." Then the tea was wheeled in. Choice china, old silver, and a profusion of cakes and sandwiches. It kept them busy for a time. You may be helping to make history, Roger remarked. Do you know what Ewan's proposals will be? I do not, was the rather acid reply. He means well. I only hope he is not making mischief. Time will tell, Roger smiled. History and mischief have always been intertwined. They chatted for some time. He asked questions about the old abbey, but she replied very briefly, attending more to the little boy, telling him what cakes he might take. He was certainly well behaved and did not clamor for what was denied him. Then the footman who had brought in the tea returned and whispered that someone wanted her ladyship on the telephone. How annoying, she said. Will you excuse me, Major Benyon? I am sure Ambrose will be safe with you. He has finished his tea. Quite safe. Have you finished? He asked as she left the room. Mum said so, was the reply. And mummies always know, don't they? It was not for him to undermine authority, even with the chocolate éclair at which the boy looked rather longingly. Tell me, Ambrose, about the games you play. My father is a lord. I know, but that doesn't prevent you having a bit of fun sometimes. Are there any little boys in the village you can play with? The big, rather expressionless eyes looked at him. My father is a lord, was again a reply. I have a little girl. She is younger than you, but she is full of mischief. Don't you ever want to get into mischief? I know your father is a lord, he added to forestall the reply. But wouldn't you like to throw stones or climb a tree sometimes? Bridget wouldn't let me. Bridget is your nurse? What games do you play with her? Snakes and ladders. She reads to me. I've got a pony. Good. Can it run fast or jump? Bridget generally leads him. Do you ever get your clothes in a mess? He shook his head. Have you any friends? Rhoda said she was my friend. Good. Is Rhoda a little girl about your age? Another shake of the head. She's growed up. That is a pity. What would happen if you did mess your clothes and were naughty? I'd be put in bed till it was time to be dressed again. Not smacked. Mummy said no one mustn't touch me. My father is a lord. What exactly is a lord? Roger was almost impatient. My father is. Everyone obeys him. At that moment, rather to his relief, the mother returned. That tiresome Mr. Ruddle, she said. Something wrong with his car. He will be an hour late. What would you like to do? Don't let me be in the way. If I may, I will get my rod and find my way to the river. I may meet Henshaw. You cannot miss your way. Cross the lawn and the path leads straight to it. Thank you. Do you fish? No. I think it cruel. But you eat fish? Certainly I do if it's caught in a net, not with a hook in its mouth. That is a point of view, Roger said. I've seen the boats coming in loaded with gasping fish. I almost believe they would prefer to be hooked and dispatched quickly. She did not deign to argue. The maid will show you your room, she said. Come, Ambrose. Roger soon fetched his tackle and made his way to the stream. The lawn, as Lady Bethesda had called it, stretched for almost the entire width of the property. At one time, the village cricket matches had been played there, but her ladyship had discontinued the practice after the arrival of her son. As he crossed it, Roger felt he had not made too good an impression on his hostess. After all, it was the promise of fishing that had brought him there, though she probably was not aware of the fact. She might be a very humane woman, but she was certainly narrow-minded. He was more interested in her son. She was hardly fitting him to play his part in the world. A nicely mannered little boy, but too much cotton wool is bad for anyone. Things might be better when he went to school if she could find a school fit for him to go to. At the far end of the lawn, between the trees, was the broad pathway leading to the river. Near the river, but inside the garden, was a wooden hut used perhaps by bathers of the changing room. At the side of the hut, he saw a young couple in a very loving attitude. Was the girl the absent nurse, or were they both members of the house party? He paused for a moment. Although they were holding each other's arms, they did not appear to be talking or expressing affection. They had a tense look as though listening to something. He coughed and took a step forward. The girl heard him and at once turned away. The young man followed her, and they were lost in the bushes that apparently bordered the stream. He went on. As he did, so the door of the hut opened, and two other people looking rather angry came out. "Captain Henshaw," Rogers said, going forward, "Lady Bethesda told me you were trying your luck. I thought I would have a cast." "May your luck be better than mine," was the terse reply. "Nothing doing. How are you, Mrs. Henshaw?" Rogers smiled to the young woman. "Lady Bethesda thought you had gone with Ewan to pick up some of his friends." "She should have done," Oswald said. "Then I might have caught something." "More perhaps than you expected," Sandra remarked. "Ewan's car is small. There might not have been room enough." "He is expected back soon," Roger said. "I think I will look round and see if fortune is kind." They did not encourage conversation. He walked on. Beyond the hut was a gate opening onto a footpath beside the stream. It looked inviting, but his luck was no better than Henshaw's. Chapter 4. The Ginger Group. Cocktails were served before dinner. All the guests, including Mr. Ruddle, had arrived. Roger was greeted by Ewan and introduced to his fellow MPs. There appeared to be 7 of them. He had heard there was a new aristocracy in the Labor Party, the intelligentsia as opposed to the horny-handed, the public school class in distinction from those who had got their start in the mines, the railways, or the factories. Of the former, Hugh Gaitskell and his predecessor Lord Attley stood preeminent. Of the latter, he thought of Keir Hardie, I.H., Thomas Bevan, Nye Bevan, and many others. The more credit to those who from humble beginnings had risen by their own efforts and personality to the highest rank. Of the men he now met, the only one whose name was known to him was Bill Ruddle, whose car mishap had so annoyed Lady Bethesda. He was big in build, loud in voice, and self-assured. He had often been in trouble with the Speaker in the House of Commons. He had been named on more than one occasion. To be named is not to be famed, but it may be a short road to notoriety. The one of the group who might have belonged to the intelligentsia was introduced as Fred Gibbons. He appeared more cultured, quieter, and with some sense of humor. Roger was no active partisan, but if there was mischief brewing, it might be interesting to hear what it was. He was not introduced to their ladies, mostly stout and middle-aged, who formed another group by themselves. He was, however, surprised to see among them the young girl he had disturbed beside the hut. He could not identify her companion. She and the Henshaw were helping to circulate drinks. As soon as he could, Roger went to Lord and Lady Bethesda, who were a little apart from their guests. She introduced him to her husband and then moved away. Roger remembered the Welsh lion as he had been in his stormier days. Then his hair had been dark like his son Ewan's. It was now almost white. He had in some ways shrunk. He looked a sick man. "Years ago, I attended one of your rallies in Trafalgar Square," Roger said to him. "Things have changed a bit since then." "There is still room for improvement," the old man replied. "How horrible if there were not. The thought of a world where any change must be for the worse is quite frightening. It is good of you to let your son and his friends put us on the right road, provided it is the left road. You travel with him?" Roger asked. "I don't know yet where he is going. There can be a smash if you travel too fast in any direction. Have you seen my boy Ambrose?" It was an abrupt question. Roger gathered his lordship did not want to commit himself on any line in politics. "I have. A nice little chap. Not a lion cub yet, but there is no knowing what he may become. Then they were joined by Sandra Henshaw and Ewan. "Dad," said the latter, "we want you to settle a bet. When did women first get the vote, and who was prime minister at the time?" "Sandra says women are naturally more conservative than men." "Female suffrage," Lord Bethesda replied. "That brings back memories of those marvelous people, Mrs. Pankhurst and her daughters Christabel and Sylvia. But I doubt if one woman in 10 who now have the vote know even their names. Very clever and determined they were. I was once at a meeting addressed by Christabel. She was telling her audience what her mother and her friends were suffering for the cause they believed in. Imprisonment, forcible feeding, and every kind of indignity. "Two of us," she said, "hid in the House of Commons for 24 hours without food or water so that when proceedings started, they might shout our slogan votes for women. How many of you men would have the pluck and endurance to do a thing like that?" A heckler shouted, "We do not go where we are not wanted." Christabel replied in a flash, "I'm glad you were so sure of your welcome tonight." There was a roar of laughter, and the heckler shut up. "A very smart retort," Roger said. "Very," Ewan agreed. "But what is the answer to our problem?" "Memories are short," his father replied. "Women got the vote in 1918, and Lloyd George was prime minister. It was an agreed measure as women had done such splendid work in the war. I should say most women vote as their husbands tell them, but an increase in the price of eggs will always be more important to them than foreign policy." "Quite right, too," said Sandra. "Thank you, Lord Bethesda. I lose my bet, but I'm at least right in that." "I hope the loss is not a heavy one," Roger smiled. "Purely a question of currency." Ewan smirked, looking at Sandra, who cast down her eyes. Then dinner was announced, and they went into what had no doubt been the refectory room in former days. There were 20 of them in all, and the table was a noble sight with gay flowers, burnished silver, and sparkling glass. The food was equally stimulating. Roger guessed Lady Bethesda was responsible for it, and wondered why she had not thought plainer fare sufficient for the company. No doubt she had her reasons. He had noticed before that the men did most of the talking, and their wives, and used to such grandeur, had grouped together to whisper among themselves. Now the attention of all was devoted to what was placed before them. It was a demonstration of what a labor leader might achieve if he married wealth, but its wisdom was open to question. For men servants did the waiting and did it well. Roger found himself next to a Mrs. Dudell whose husband was a trade union MP. She was not talkative, and he was glad to turn to the girl on his left, none other than the one he had seen outside the hut. He noticed that Ewan and Sandra were opposite to them and seemed to be getting on very well. The dress of the ladies was somewhat remarkable, as while 3 or 4 wore dark clothes almost up to their chins, others went to the further extreme and showed their breeding by a display of bosom that would have satisfied a film star. Lady Bethesda had a pale green sleeveless frock doing justice to her necklace and bracelet of diamonds and emeralds. The attire of the men was equally varied. Lord Bethesda wore a dinner jacket suit, as did Roger Benyon, Oswald Henshaw, and Fred Gibbons. The others were in ordinary dark clothes or tweeds, perhaps to show their democratic convictions or maybe the limitations of their wardrobes. Ewan had been in 2 minds in the matter. He had at first kept to his day's suit, thinking it would be more in character with the part he had to play and might possibly save some of his guests from embarrassment. Then he had seen Sandra in a lovely off-the-shoulder blue frock that toned well with her beautiful eyes. He decided he could not sit beside her as he was, and had dashed off hastily to change into a suit like his father's. "Nobody yet has told me who you are," Roger remarked to his younger neighbor. "You do not look like an earnest orator, but I may be wrong. Are you so famous that I ought to know?" She turned and smiled at him. A very charming smile. She had red hair, green eyes, and pleasing features. She wore a simple frock of primrose yellow with a single string of pearls. Her hands were good and had no rings. It is rather tempting to tell you something wonderful about myself, or to hint at something mysterious, she said in a sweet voice with a musical little laugh. But you would soon find out the truth. I am whodunit. That does not convey a great deal, except that you are a friend of Master Ambrose, whose father is a lord. Who told you that? She asked quickly. He did. Are you in any way responsible for his upbringing? I am not. He is a dear little boy, really, but I had better not say what I think. I am the niece of the lord, the daughter of his sister, and also his secretary. I help Aunt Connie in some things, but not with Ambrose. I might have a bad influence. He has a maid and a nursery governess who bring him up in the way his mother thinks he should go. Poor little devil, Roger murmured. It may be better when he goes to school. But she won't let him grow up naturally. I gathered that she approves of you, not wholeheartedly. What a shame. There is something else I know about you. Rhoda, if I may call you that. What is it? If I were a fortune teller, I should say there was a tall, dark man in your life. So you saw us, she flushed. You are very inquisitive. I don't think I like you. She turned away, and Roger caught a remark from his other neighbor, who was mopping up some gravy with a piece of bread. She was a buxom woman, somewhat like a famous and popular MP from Liverpool, though not built on quite such generous lines. Jolly good, this stew, she was saying. I'm a fair hand at a stew myself. The Mr. Dudell likes something he can get his teeth into. From her speech, she was a Londoner. It figured on the menu as Rista Vomersel, a delicious compound of sweetbreads, mushrooms, and other things. Roger beckoned the waiter, who brought her a further portion. Do you help your husband in his constituency? He asked. I do my best, but I ain't a speaker like what he is. At election times I call on the women and ask him what they want. When they tell me, I say vote for my husband and you'll get it. Generally, it's more pay and cheaper food. If everyone got more money, food and everything else would be dearer, wouldn't they? Roger asked. I don't argue, Mrs. Dudell said. I just tell him. Fair enough, Roger smiled. Where's your husband's constituency? North London. Lived there all our lives. We both have. Boy and girl sweethearts, as you may say. Never wanted no one else. I always encourage him going to his night classes. See how he's got on, as good as any of them. It was a Tory strong old once, but never since they got my bird. A sincere tribute, if not an impartial one. Having delivered it, she attacked the food. Rhoda, in the meantime, had found her further neighbor, Mr. Edmonds, deep in a political argument across the table. So she turned back to Roger. I am sorry, she said, but I ought to have asked if you found Brother Gregory's room comfortable. Who may Brother Gregory be? He asked. The monk whose cell has been allotted to you. All the rooms in that wing were originally occupied by the brothers. The prior had good rooms in the front, which my uncle and aunt now use. Of course, there have been a lot of alterations through the ages, and Aunt Connie's father threw 2 cells into one, but they are still quite small. All are the same on that passage. So I may be displacing Thomas as well as Gregory. Do you mind? Not provided the bed is a little softer than those holy men fancied. I can promise that, she laughed. My uncle does not often entertain. We try to give decent rooms to the married couples, but single men like you, and of course Ewan, have to be content with the cells. I cannot claim to be a single man, but the room is very adequate for one who deserts his wife, even for a weekend. How are you quartered? I have a very nice room, but I gave it to Mr. and Mrs. Boyne. Don't let them know. Even then we should have been rather puzzled, but Captain and Mrs. Henshaw offered to take 2 little rooms, plenty of them, and that gave another big one. Where do you put the crowd that is to come on Sunday? There will be about 30 of them, but only for lunch. We can manage that. Housekeeping is more of an art than I realized. Do you always live in this style, with these faithful servitors? Good heavens, no. We have 2 who live in, and the gardener's wife sometimes, and some help from the village. On special occasions like this, Aunt Connie borrows from one of her hotels. Lucky Aunt Connie. Tell me, Rhoda, who is the dark, handsome young woman on your uncle's right? You ought to know her. Her photograph is often in the papers. She is Gwenny Wren. She writes a lot and speaks, too. Ewan thinks her marvelous. Is she also in a cell? Or have you underground dungeons for women who talk? She laughed. She has quite a nice cell not far from yours. There are queer places below, though we do not use them. There are the little ease we sometimes show people. A cell where one can neither stand up nor lie down. Yes, they had some nice ideas, hadn't they? I suppose it was a punishment or penance. I sometimes wonder how they endured it. I suppose we are getting softer. We take the greatest care of our athletes, yet they are continually crocking up. Those people lived for years in damp cells and often had a bit of torture, too. How do you account for it? It does seem odd, Roger said. But you must remember brothers Gregory and Thomas were content to hobble about their duties. They were not called on to run 100 yards in under 10 seconds or play football and cricket against champions. You have not yet told me about the ghost. We haven't got one. No ghost? A place of this age, with underground torture chambers and no ghost? How do you account for mysterious noises at night? Are you trying to frighten me? I don't hear them. If I did, I'd say to myself, we must get the rat man again. You are a girl with strong nerves. You are not vexed with me for seeing you this afternoon, were you? It was not really my fault. She again gave that charming blush. I suppose not. Can you keep a secret? The oyster is a chatterbox compare with me. Then I'll risk it. Jeremy Valiance and I are engaged, but are not supposed to be. Why not? Aunt Connie does not approve. She says if I wait a bit, she will find me someone worthy of Lord Bethesda's niece. The son of another lord? Something like that, but I only want Jeremy. She says he must not come to the house, so I have to meet him in the garden when I can. What does your uncle think about it? He leaves it to Aunt Connie. What does Jeremy do? Are you dependent on your aunt and uncle? Jerry is the village schoolmaster, and they're on the committee that runs these things. If they knew about us, they might get him transferred to the other side of the county. We don't want that. I'm over 21, but Aunt Connie says she will give me a dowry when I marry the right man. Jerry and I are saving as hard as we can, and when we have a certain amount, we shall just marry and tell them afterwards. Jerry is a lucky fellow. Have I anything against him except that he has no blue blood? We haven't blue blood either, only cold dust. Uncle was a miner, and my mother married a miner. I don't pretend to be what I am not. Uncle Jim helped me to get a decent education, and that is how I met Jerry. He says Uncle Jim was a grand chap before he married Aunt Connie, but now she is poisoning him with riches. Many people would consider it a very slow poison and a pleasant one, Rogers said, but I see his point. How do you get on with Cousin Ewan? He is all right. He likes Jerry, but we have not told him. Aunt Connie does not really approve of Ewan either. Do you know where he lives? Somewhere in the East End of London, in his constituency. He once said it was called Old Nick's Folly. Old Nick being my father. Oh, I am sorry, Rhoda murmured. I never thought. Why should you? I came here to try to get Ewan to clear out. Do you not think Aunt Connie might help him to move to a neighborhood more worthy of the family? She might, Rhoda said doubtfully. My father's folly was perhaps the finest thing he has done. He built those houses for deserving old people. Ewan got his by a sort of mistake. Now we want it for Dan Floss, your gardener. How splendid. Ewan ought to go at once. He says he cannot afford to unless the parents help. That is why I am here. Will you speak a word if you get a chance? Of course I will. Good. And if I can help you, and Jerry, you may rely on me. Do you know Gwenny Wren pretty well? Not really. Ewan thinks a lot of her. Are they likely to marry? He seems in no hurry. More interested at the moment in Sandra Henshaw. I don't know. She is very pretty, isn't she? I like her, but I do not care much for her husband. I met them as I passed that hut, Rogers said, changing the subject. Are there good fish in the stream? I believe so. I did not get a bite. I thought perhaps they had all been caught for us to eat tonight. They were tackling roast duck at the moment. Why so? Rhoda asked. Friday at the Priory. I'm sure Brother Gregory would have been busy with rod and line. His only chance of supper. I am afraid that is one of the customs we do not observe, she laughed. Perhaps the fish are specially wary on Fridays. Is the fishing free? No, it is ours for quite a stretch. When Mr. Martin, that is, Aunt Connie's father, first came, he wanted to close the footpath too. There was a bit of trouble about it, and he had to give way. Did not make for popularity? He didn't understand the village people. Of course, newcomers are always regarded as foreigners for a generation or two. How do they take to your uncle? He does his best to be friendly with them. A little later, when all had eaten and drunk well, that uncle at the head of the table rapped on it with his knife, and everyone turned towards him. As you know, he said, my son Ewan thinks, rightly or wrongly, that our party needs a more progressive policy if we are to win the next election. He says we want a ginger group and hopes he can get our leaders to adopt his views. I think it would be a good thing if he told us tonight what these views are, a sort of agenda. Then you can consider and discuss them among yourselves tomorrow and be prepared to say at the bigger meeting on Sunday how far you support them. He has only given me a vague outline, but I am sure you will listen carefully to what he proposes. There was none of the old roar about the lion's speech. He spoke slowly and clearly, and to Roger, at any rate, he was committing himself to nothing. There was a burst of applause which was renewed when Ewan rose to his feet. Would the ladies prefer to withdraw? He asked. They may find it dull. They are as much concerned as the men, Gwenny Wren said loudly. They have votes and they pay taxes. And Ave to run the ohms, added Mrs. Dudell to more applause.